Good afternoon, everybody. We're going to talk about artillery, finally. Up till now, with our morning talks from Dan, from Steve, and from Laura, we've been building up. We've been building up to the actual battle at Harpers Ferry. So you're going to hear the artillery perspective from me, and then you're going to be followed by Chris Mikowski, who's going to talk about Jackson and his role at Harpers Ferry. Early on September 14, 1862, the beleaguered Harpers Ferry garrison watched helplessly as the Confederate forces on Loudoun and Maryland Heights mounted artillery on the high ground overlooking the town. These guns were joined by a ring of cannons on Schoolhouse Ridge as Stonewall Jackson's 3 divisions reached the town later in the day. When the bombardment began that afternoon, some 60 Confederate guns from 17 batteries rained fire on the Federal garrison. Conventional wisdom is that this was a one-sided affair, the Confederates meeting little opposition from the 6 Federal batteries. But despite the odds against them, surrounded, outnumbered, disadvantaged by poor positioning and weak leadership, the 6 Federal batteries gave a good account of themselves, as Brigadier General Julius White said, acquitting themselves in the most honorable way. So that's what we're going to talk about. Focus on the federal side, but certainly we're going to talk about the role of the Confederate artillery in making this happen. Before we delve into the fight itself, let's talk about a couple things that are important to artillerymen. Geography, elevation, and range. So let's take a look at Harpers Ferry. This map is a part of a collection that our cartographer, Aaron Holly in the back, you want to stand up there, my friend, or sit down and wave, has put together. He is the resident cartographer in any of the publications or products you see coming out of the Institute. Aaron is the guy that's working on the maps. He did the maps for Antietam, artillery of Antietam rather, and we have a book coming out this summer that's going to be a detailed artillery atlas of Antietam. So hopefully you'll look forward to that when it comes out. All right, I'll point a couple things out about the map before we get into the details. The darker the green means the lower in elevation. So you can clearly look on that and see where dark green is. That's usually where there's a stream or an intermittent stream flowing into the Potomac River. And the higher the elevation, you start to get into the tans and browns and dark browns. So the high ground is up obviously on Maryland Heights and Loudoun and Heights. That doesn't denote vegetation. So dark green doesn't mean it's a jungle, and light brown or brown means it's a desert or something like that. That's solely for elevation purposes. The most important terrain, the key to Harpers Ferry, is Loudoun Heights, or Maryland Heights rather. A.P. Hill, in talking to General Julius White at the surrender of Harpers Ferry, said, "I would rather take the place 20 times than undertake to hold it once." Okay? So Maryland Heights up there, about 950 feet in elevation, is where the Naval Battery was that we heard from by Steve earlier. Second in importance probably is Loudoun Heights across the Shenandoah River. There's 2 artillery positions there. There is John Walker's division at about 1,100 feet in elevation. And then there's Stapleton Crutchfield's guns that are going to be at the lower elevation further down. The next important elevation or place to talk about is Schoolhouse Ridge. That is where the Confederate batteries, the Stonewall Jackson's 3 divisions, are going to unlimber on the morning of September 14th and open fire on the Confederates from that position. The next thing is what's called Bull Hill. It's actually south of the Martinsburg, or the Charlestown Pike. Where did my, there it goes. So that's Charlestown Pike. If you're familiar, that's Route 340 right now. That runs from Harpers Ferry down. So south of Charlestown Pike is Bull Hill. That's going to be an important position the Confederates are going to capture. Then we get to the Federal positions. Bolivar Heights. Bolivar Heights is the position held by most of the Confederate artillery during the battle. It is higher in elevation than Schoolhouse Ridge. I'll show you some pictures here in a few minutes about that. It's around 650 feet in elevation north of the Charlestown Pike, and a little bit south of Charlestown Pike is a little lower in elevation. And then the last thing is Camp Hill. Camp Hill is in the center of town. That is where Rufus Saxton put his artillery during the attack that happened in May of 1862 right here. So some pictures to go along with it. There's Maryland Heights. What did A.P. Hill say? I'd rather take the place 20 times than undertake to hold it once. You get artillery up on that position there, and that's what the Confederates will ultimately do. Those Federals are in a bad place. Across the river on the Shenandoah River side is Loudon Heights. Another piece of high ground, 1,000 feet in elevation at its highest point. This is the Charlestown Pike. South of the Charlestown Pike is Bull Hill. That's where the Confederates are going to put some guns under A.P. Hill on the afternoon of September 14th. And finally, that's Bolivar Heights. That's Bolivar Heights from the position of the Confederate artillery, from Jackson's artillery on Schoolhouse Ridge. That's a pretty imposing position. That's about 600 feet in elevation. There's a little light spot there. I don't know if you've been to Bolivar Heights, but if you're up there and you're looking at those guns looking out, you can see some Confederate guns in the distance. That's because there's this little notch in the tree line that allows you to see that. And this is Camp Hill there, and this is from the bus parking lot. If you were there yesterday, we parked from the shuttle bus. But right across that is Camp Hill. We usually don't look at it from that elevation. It's about 500 feet in elevation. Excuse me, but that's what Camp Hill looks like. Okay, so what's the other thing artillery needs to be worried about? Distances, targets, elevation. So we're back to our base map here. And now what I'm going to do is overlay the ranges of these guns. Okay, how far can these guns fire? You have the Mexican War vintage howitzers, 12-pounders, 24-pounders. They're only going to get out about to between 1,000 and 1,300 yards. You overlay that on this map, you're going to see that they really don't have much of a reach to them, do they? Then you get to the 6-pounders and Napoleons and James guns a little bit further out. You see them right there in the middle. And then you have the long-range guns, the Dahlgren, the Navy guns that Steve talked about. He showed you that map here. And then the 10 and 20-pound Parrots, 3-inch ordnance rifles. At 15 degrees elevation, they can go out to 3,820 yards. Okay, they are the dominant guns at Harpers Ferry for both sides. We already got a great biography on Dixon Miles. We know about the correspondence that Dixon Miles had with different officials, General Wool, General Halleck, etc. He is the commander of Harpers Ferry at the time. He is going to briefly be interrupted in command by General Rufus Saxton. We heard about him as well. And what do we hear and learn about Rufus Saxton? He conducted a successful defense of Harpers Ferry. Okay? How did he do it? He pulled off of Bolivar Heights to Camp Hill. Much narrower front to defend. And who's his chief of staff? Dixon Miles. How much did Dixon Miles learn from that experience? Hard to say. Don't think we learned too much from that piece of experience there. To complicate Dixon Miles' life is Brigadier General John Wool, commander of the Middle Department, and sometimes it's called the 8th Corps, but he is the newly appointed commander of the 8th Corps or the Middle Department. Wool, as you heard earlier, also does not like this position at Harpers Ferry. He calls it a very indefensible position. When he takes command, he writes that message to Secretary of War Stanton. At the time he's looking at Harpers Ferry, there's only about 1,200 infantrymen and an unmanned naval battery of Dahlgren guns. They had originally had a detachment of sailors, we believe, from the Washington Navy Yard when those guns went into effect, but they were pulled back, I believe, when Saxton left. So Saxton is only there during that immediate crisis that we're talking about, right? When Stonewall Jackson approaches Bolivar Heights in May of 1862, okay? He goes back to doing other things. Miles is back in command. Brigadier General Wool descends on Harpers Ferry, and he conducts an inspection. He directs Miles to complete the entrenchments and artillery positions on Camp Hill, which Saxton started back in May. He requests men capable of using the large guns that should be set immediately. We don't have anybody on the naval batteries right now. And he orders additional fortifications to be constructed, Maryland Heights and other places. Did any of that get done? You already know the answer, right? We'll get to that. But he orders, most importantly, for the garrison, the first of 6 artillery batteries that will eventually be located at Harpers Ferry in defense of the town. And they are from the 5th New York Heavy Artillery. The 5th New York Heavy Artillery has been around since November 61, mustered into U.S. service in April of 62. Mostly New Yorkers, New York City guys. The commander is a guy named Samuel Graham. He's from Belfast, Ireland. He immigrated to the United States. He's a successful businessman and a civic leader, I guess we'd call it, in New York City. And probably a little political patronage doesn't help, right? So he's going to get command of the 5th Heavy Artillery. And originally tended to guard New York Harbor. But on May 28th, 1842, it's moved to Baltimore. And so it's going to take over some of the fortifications in Baltimore. And about 3 weeks later, General Wool is going to do what? I need a couple companies of your battalion, Colonel Graham. I need them to go to Harpers Ferry. Okay, so June 19th, 1862, we have 2 units moving to Harpers Ferry. The first is Company A, 5th New York, recruited also in New York and Brooklyn. The commander is the son of the regimental commander. This is, John Graham. He's 27 years old. He immigrated with his father from Belfast, Northern Ireland, and he's running a successful grocery business in New York when the war starts, okay? His battery has 12-pound Napoleons and 20-pound Parrott guns. Now, the next break we have, I would call your attention to Jim Kravchuk's 20-pound Parrott that was actually fired at Harpers Ferry, located at Harpers Ferry. It's a little heavy, though, okay? He warned me not to try to pick this baby up, but this is something to come over and look at, thanks to Jim. If you look inside it, and he's got a flashlight here, you can actually see case shot inside this thing. But imagine 20-pound Parrott guns at Harpers Ferry, or for that matter, where? Guns are positioned at Antietam a few days later. There's 22 of these 20-pound Parrotts at Antietam, and Graham's got some of these at Harpers Ferry as well. So come over and take a look at these. Thanks, Jim, for bringing those along for us today. Okay, that's Company A. Camp Hill, we're going to put them on Camp Hill at the beginning for now, okay, but they're going to move around. Graham will say, when he's testifying in front of the military court that Steve also talked about, that his battery was all over the place, okay? And interestingly enough, unlike a lot of artillery reports that you're going to find in the Civil War, there are 3 or 4 lines and don't say a lot, because of the testimony that all of these battery commanders make in front of the military commission, we have pages and pages of information about these 6 batteries that you don't normally get on an artillery report. So that was real helpful for me in putting this together, reading through that testimony, the detailed questions these guys got about what elevation did you fire your guns, or how much ammunition did you fire, or how much ammunition did you have at the end of the day. I was able to incorporate a lot of that into this presentation today. Company F, 5th New York, that's the next one. Commanded by Captain Eugene McGrath. Okay, McGrath, unlike Graham, is a combat veteran. McGrath was in a couple of pre-war militia units. Okay, he is another immigrant. He's from Duncannon, Ireland. And he is going to come to the United States and runs a boot manufacturing company at the beginning of the Civil War. He's going to fight at first Bull Run. He's going to be injured there, but he's going to come back in command of the Company F. Excuse me 1 second. Somebody's trying to book a tour for me at Antietam. I guess I can't take that right. All right, so McGrath commands the naval battery. These are the 9-inch Dahlgren guns that Steve talked about. Now, the problem is that that naval battery is not pointed in the direction that the threat's going to be this time around. The threat now is going to be coming from Maryland Heights from the north. Where are these guns positioned? Thanks, Jim. Could I leave it over there? Yeah. Thanks. They're pointed at Bolivar Heights, Camp Hill, and Loudon Heights. Are they going to help defend from an attack from the north? No, they're not. Okay? But that's the situation when McGrath gets there in June. And one of the first things that's going to happen is he's going to meet with Colonel Miles, and Miles is going to say, give me an assessment of what your artillery requirements are. So that's a little bit of proactivity on the part of Miles, I would say. And so McGrath is going to scout Maryland Heights, and what do we call it further north? We call it Elk Ridge. If you're at Antietam at the Visitor Center looking to the east, you can see Elk Ridge rising up in front of you, okay? So McGrath is going to make an assessment. He's going to travel up and down Maryland Heights, Elk Ridge, and he's going to say, I need more artillery. I need 3 more batteries of artillery up there, okay? I need a battery. There's the naval battery, around 950 feet in elevation, but I need a battery at Lookout, Camp Point Lookout. That's the highest elevation in Maryland Heights. I need a battery there, okay, because that can see everywhere that you need to see stuff at, okay? And I need a battery at Solomon's Gap. That's how the bad guys can get up on Maryland Heights, is to get up there at Solomon's Gap and then drive south. And that's what the Confederates are going to do in a few weeks when they get here. He says, I need 3 batteries. Miles says, check's in the mail. Batteries ever come? No. Now, Steve and I exchanged some mail a couple weeks ago. We're not sure if Miles never ordered them in the first place, or if Wool turned down the request. We know who Wool is, right? Or, as this information Steve shared with me, Henry Halleck had something to do with it, okay? The bottom line is what? We don't get any more artillery for Maryland Heights. In mid-July, the next battery rolls in to Harpers Ferry. This is a brand new battery. It's the 15th Indiana, organized on March 11th, 1862. And initially the soldiers, before they get their guns and equipment, are guarding POWs in Indianapolis. They're mustered into U.S. service July 5th, so they've only been around 90 days. Only been around 90 days. Their commander is a guy named John von Salen from Brunswick, Germany, who runs a bookkeeping business in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and he happens to be in Indiana when this battery is organized, and so he's going to sign on as the captain of this battery. It's an independent battery, not assigned to another battalion or anything like that. It has the excellent 3-inch ordnance rifles, okay? Maybe the best gun out there. That's what Henry Hunt thought. They can reach out and touch, can't they? 15-degree elevation, they can fire out to 3,820 yards. It's a wrought iron gun. They don't blow up, unlike their cousins, the 10-pound Parrots. But this battery is going to roll into Harpers Ferry with 6 of these. Okay, that's a significant upgrade in the artillery establishment at Harpers Ferry. Because up till now, we just got some Dahlgren guns, and we got some 10-pound, 20-pound Parrots, and a couple Napoleons, okay? So this battery is going to come in mid-July to Harpers Ferry. And about 2 weeks later, we're finally going to get an artillery commander at Harpers Ferry. You know, the Army of the Potomac is who? Henry Hunt or William Berry before that. The commander of this detachment, if you want to call it, his name is Major Henry McIlvaine from Louisville, Kentucky. He's about 34 years old at the time of the battle. He is a farmer in the New York City area when he enlists or joins up Company A, the 5th New York Artillery. But within 3 months, they make him a major. So he's got to have something going on. Either it's a political connection or maybe he just happens to be a proficient soldier. But McIlvaine will take over the field grade major's position in the 5th New York in March. In August, he's ordered to Harpers Ferry to take command of the artillery there. He writes his wife on August 21st. He says, "The dust here is immense. Want rain badly. am at work placing another 2-gun battery on the Shenandoah River, defending the arsenal, the ford, railroad, and road. And that's what's key about Harpers Ferry, the arsenal, the ford, the railroad, and the road. That's why this is such an important position in the Civil War, throughout the war. I have 30 contrabands and 5 whites at work. In the time of peace, make ready for war. I do not think the enemy can ever get here or anywhere near it. Well, that's maybe the one wrong thing he says in that letter, isn't it? All right, we remember that General Wool visited Harpers Ferry a few months ago. So he comes back to Harpers Ferry in late August. And what's he find? Nothing's been done. Miles has not constructed the entrenchments. And so Wool, who you can tell by that face is a no-nonsense kind of guy, right? You want to follow Wool's instructions. Complete those works, build the entrenchments, and construct a blockhouse on the summit of Maryland Heights to protect the rear of the naval battery. So I need you to work on that right now. Miles fails to complete any of the portions. Now I know somebody in the Q&A is going to say, why does he get away with that? Why doesn't this guy get fired right off the bat? We'll talk about that a little bit more as we go forward. But so far, we've not gotten any additional artillery, right? We haven't got fortifications built. Things aren't looking good, right? Because now in late August, what's happening in Virginia? Robert E. Lee is winning the Battle of Second Manassas that we heard about earlier today. Lee is on the move, like I said. And so, as Steve mentioned, White's brigades, 2 brigades, are in Winchester. And as Sharon mentioned, a lot of the senior leadership that's going to be at Harpers Ferry comes from those brigades out of Winchester. And Halleck is going to order Julius White to abandon Winchester and move his command to Harpers Ferry, okay? And White will bring along 2 veteran batteries that have seen some action. They've been in the Army for a year or so. So now we're including, with the addition of those 3 rookie batteries, 2 veteran batteries at Harpers Ferry. The first is the 1st Independent Indiana Battery, and they are organized in May of '61, so they've been around a while, right? Their commander is a guy named Silas F. Rigby. He's 33 years old. Silas Rigby is a, let me check here real quick. Bear with me. He's a painter, house painter, okay? So he commands the battery here. It's going to operate in Western Virginia for the first part of the war. It's going to get some experience. It's going to be at McDowell and Cross Keys. Didn't play a role at Cross Keys, but the battery's been under fire. They've had some combat experience. On September 2nd and 3rd, they are going to move from where? Winchester to Harpers Ferry. Now, Rigby sounds like a guy that shows some initiative. There are some 20-pound Parrots, like Jim's over there, that are in the fortifications, and he basically strips the horses from some of his supply wagons and things like that, and he drags a couple 20-pound Parrots with him from Winchester to Harpers Ferry. Now, they don't have a great, significantly good gun here. This is a 24-pound howitzer. It's a Mexican war gun, very short range, 1,322 yards, okay? But nevertheless, this augments our defenses at Harpers Ferry. They're going to get put on Bolivar Heights when they get there. They're going to get the Bolivar Heights. And the last battery, the second of the 2 veteran batteries from Winchester, is Potts, Ohio Battery. Now this outfit, like the Indiana Battery before it, started out as infantry, okay? And they're eventually going to be converted to artillery. They're going to also serve with the Indiana boys at Cross Keys. They're going to be in Western Virginia for a year. So they've been around a while, okay? They've got some experience. They've been under fire. They are going to move to Winchester, and then they're going to be equipped with excellent cannons, 3-inch ordnance rifles and Napoleons. Okay, that's the best combination you can have. 3-inch ordnance rifles, long-range counter-battery fire. Napoleons, mid-range infantry killers. So he's got a good combination. And it was not unusual before the Civil War to have in the U.S. artillery a mixture of guns. By the time the Civil War rolls around and we get guys like Henry Hunt in there and William Barry were trying to make batteries one type of gun versus multiple. Simplifies what? Ammunition resupply. We don't have to worry about different kinds of ammunition, right? He's got a battery that's got some excellent guns. He's a pretty sharp guy. As you're going to see here in my epilogue at the end, what happens to Potts, I think he's going to come in there pretty well equipped to do what he needs to do at Harpers Ferry. Okay, so when those soldiers from Winchester roll in to Harpers Ferry on September 4th, along with them comes their commander, Brigadier General Julius White. The first thing he does is he starts looking around. That's Loudon Heights up there. And he probably asks his boss, why don't we have anything up on Loudon Heights? Well, Miles says, you know, that's not the direction the enemy's going to come from. The last time they were here in May, they came in from what direction? Bolivar Heights. He says, don't worry about Loudon Heights. They're not going to come from that direction. Okay, A. And B, when William Trimble brings it up again, William Trimble's one of the brigade commanders, he says the Confederates would be unable to emplace guns on Loudon Heights or the tablelands under Loudon Heights, okay? So he leaves Loudon Heights undefended. Okay, there's Loudon Heights here, undefended, and when the Confederates get there, we get this thing going right. What do we got? 15 guns up. The Confederates managed to get 15 guns up on Loudon Heights from John Walker's division and from Stapleton Crutchfield's artillery that accompanied Stonewall Jackson. So once again, we see what? Miles falling down on the job. White properly says, what are we doing about Loudon Heights? And he gets some excuses about why we can't put guns up there. Hey, they're not coming from that direction, or it's just going to be too hard for the Confederates. Well, the Confederates put 15 guns up there. We'll have another discussion about Maryland Heights, okay? Sharon introduced us to Colonel Thomas Ford. Colonel Thomas Ford's organic battery was Potts's battery, okay? They had fought, maneuvered with Ford for quite a while, and Ford says, when they get there, come on up to Maryland Heights with me. We'll double the amount of artillery up there, and Miles immediately countermands it. No, I want them in Sandy Hook. Well, sir, that's the battery that I have worked with, okay? It's part of my regiment. It's been around a while. No, they're going to Sandy Hook, okay? So September 5th, Ford moves them up to Maryland Heights. That night, Miles countermands it. So for several days, Ford and McGrath, who's up there already, are asking for more artillery. And so we get this, dare I say, sarcastic reply from Miles. He says, if you and Captain McGrath had your way, we would have all the artillery at Harpers Ferry on Maryland Heights. Okay? What's the answer? No more artillery on Maryland Heights. What's the most important position at Harpers Ferry to defend it? Maryland Heights. We got 3 Dahlgren guns pointing in the wrong direction. All right. Now it's going to get real for Dixon Miles because the Army of Northern Virginia is crossing into Maryland, okay? And now this so-called backwater post at Harpers Ferry is going to become the focus of the next series of steps in the Maryland campaign. And now we will get a belated response from Miles, okay? Now he sort of recognizes that the way these Confederates are approaching us from many different directions, maybe I ought to put some more guns on Maryland Heights. So he's going to take 4 12-pound howitzers, okay? What do we say about 12-pound howitzers? Long range, short range? Very short range. They going to be able to do us much good up there? Probably not. They only go out to 1,072 yards, okay? Well, compounded by the fact that we get guns that are not very effective, Mexican War vintage, McGrath doesn't move them up where the infantry is that's defending Maryland Heights. Remember, we got a battery, and I'll explain that a little bit in a second. He keeps all those howitzers down there guarding the naval battery, okay? And so the problem with that is the infantry's way up here, Ford's brigade that Sharon introduced us to, but all those howitzers are down here with the naval battery. Are they, those 1,000-yard ranges, are they going to be able to support Ford? No, they're not going to be able to support. So we got an error in judgment, let's say, perhaps, by McElrath on where he puts those guns. Special Order 191 is blooming. It's coming into its full effect right now, okay? On September 12th, as I said, Special Order 191 is unfolding. Jackson has just crossed the Potomac River at Lights Ford, occupied Williamsport. Where's he headed? He's heading for Harpers Ferry, isn't he? Lafayette McLaws has crossed Brownsville Pass in the South Mountain Range. Where's he headed? For Harpers Ferry, with 2 divisions. Richard Anderson is his out. Up here you have John R. Jones, Alexander Lawton, and A.P. Hill. And the third piece of this column is John Walker's division approaching Harpers Ferry from across the Shenandoah, approaching what? Loudon Heights. Loudon Heights. So the Confederates are converging on Harpers Ferry. Just a few days ago, we saw Julius White evacuating Winchester. Apparently he's in the evacuation business because now he's got to evacuate Martinsburg and come back to Harpers Ferry. And he's going to come back to Harpers Ferry, and he's going to bring one more battery, the last battery in our toolbox, so to speak, to Harpers Ferry, and that is Battery M, 2nd Illinois Artillery. Relatively new outfit. They got James guns. Now, what's a James gun? We talk about bronze smoothbores and iron rifles. Well, this is sort of a intersection of both. It's a bronze gun, a 6-pounder, which they have rifled. Okay? It's not a very successful design. In fact, the guy that designed it, about a month after Antietam, is blown up when one of those James guns goes off. Okay? What's the problem when you have a gun in your inventory that you don't have a lot of? You probably don't have a lot of ammunition for it, do you? Okay? Phillips, who is another immigrant from Ireland, who was in the British artillery for 7 years, so he knows his stuff, but he's got James rifles, and he's only got 100 rounds per gun, okay? So he's going to have a problem right off the bat because when I fire up those 100 rounds per gun, the arsenal at Harpers Ferry only has 250 more to supply me with. So this may be a good tool in our toolbox for a short time. It can fire out to 1,700 yards, but what? When it runs out of ammo, can't put anything else in the thing, right? So this 6 guns, or 6 batteries, they're a mixed bag, okay? Battery A, it's got the 20-pound Parrots and Napoleon, so it's pretty well set up, but Graham doesn't have any experience, although his heavy artillery guys have been drilling for a while. You know, they're getting ready. Probably the best guys are these 2 guys, McGrath in Battery F and Phillips in Battery M. McGrath is out naval guns. He's got the Dahlgrens and he's got some 12-pound howitzers. And his soldiers, though, are trained on the heavy artillery. Okay. Next, we have the Illinois guys, James rifles. We talked about how good those might be. But Phillips is probably the best trained artillery officer there. He's been in the Army 7 years. But his men have only been around for 90 days, and they're limited in the amount of ammunition they got for these James guns. Rigby's outfit, veterans. They've been at Cross Keys, but they have 24-pound howitzers. That's probably not one of our best guns. It's a short-range Mexican War vintage gun. 15th Indiana, excellent 3-inch ordnance rifles. Von Salen does not have any experience, and these guys have only been around 90 days. So you see where I'm going with this. This is really a mixed bag of different artillery units thrown together within about 90 days that are going to be pressed into service when Jackson arrives. Potts Battery, maybe with like Battery M, maybe the best one here. Rifles, Napoleons. Potts has got some experience at Cross Keys, and McDowell. This is what you've been waiting for, to hear the smell the aroma of gunpowder, the thunder of the guns. My friends downstairs are not bowling anymore, so that additional special effect that I tried to work into this is not going to be here. So we'll just have to go with what we got. We're now going to get to talk about the actual battle at Harpers Ferry. So how does Miles deploy his command? And Sharon introduced us to the brigade commanders earlier. We're going to put them on the map now for you and also show you where the artillery is. So the first two brigades we'll talk about, you heard about Dutassi and Trimble, they are going to occupy Bolivar Heights. They're up on Bolivar Heights. They are facing to the west, and they have a total of 3 batteries up there. Before I even get there, Miles doesn't think that south of the Charlestown Pike anybody can get through there. Okay? Ravines impassable, and he doesn't put any troops initially south of the Charlestown Pike. He's got all his stuff up here north of the Charlestown Pike. So with Trimble and Dutassi, we have Von Salem's rookies. What do they have? They had 3-inch ordnance rifles. Next to them we have Phillips with the James guns. Okay, maybe good guns, but not a lot of ammunition for them. And then we have Rigby's battery next. Rigby's got 6 of those 24-pound howitzers. So we got a mishmash of guns up here, don't we? A mishmash of guns up here on Bolivar Heights. On Bolivar Heights. The next position we'll talk about is Camp Hill. That's where Colonel Ward's brigade is located. And at Camp Hill is Graham's battery. Remember Battery A, 5th New York? A mixture of 20-pound Parrots and Napoleons. They are on this important position at Camp Hill. Not sure what direction they're pointing, but they are in a position where they can move around and fire in different directions. Over on Maryland Heights, the most important position, dare we say, is McGrath with 3 of those Dahlgrens. Are they pointed in the right direction? No. They're pointed in this direction, okay. Can they influence? Can you turn that big old Dahlgren gun around and fire it to the north? Not easily, right? And then we got those belatedly arrived 12-pound howitzers, which have what? Yeah. Pretty short range. They're not up close to Fort and his Abattis line up here, okay? The last outfit we have is Potts and Malsby. Malsby commands the Potomac Home Brigade, and they are in Sandy Hook. They're across the river, and they are with Potts's battery over there. Remember Potts, his boss, Ford, wanted to bring them up on Maryland Heights? What did Miles say? Nope, you can't have them. So that is the layout. What is glaringly missing is what? Nothing on Loudon Heights. Nothing on Loudon Heights. So let's just look again at this artillery complement at Harpers Ferry for the Federals. There's 6 batteries. The number of guns surrendered was 47, but probably only about 39 of those were in action. The real teaching point on this thing is there are 9 different models of artillery in 6 batteries. Now, what does that mean? Significant challenges in what? Ammunition resupply, keeping the ammunition straight, okay? We already got a crisis with those James guns. We don't have much ammunition left in the stocks for the James guns. The other artillery, the other types of guns, some challenges with those as well. So that's what the Confederates have as all hell is about to break loose. So on September 12th, Kershaw and Barksdale from McLaw's command are going to seize undefended Solomon's Gap. Didn't we want to put a battery up there? We don't have a battery for you up there. And they're going to drive a very thinly held line back. We haven't lost Solomon. We haven't lost Maryland Heights yet, but now the bad guys are up on the high ground. Okay? Cobb and Armistead, a couple more brigades from R.H. Anderson's division are moving down Pleasant Valley, threatening Sandy Hook. And so Potts, whose battery is over on Sandy Hook, is going to have to cross the Potomac River, cross the Potomac River here and take position on Camp Hill. All right, so we're starting to get pushed in, aren't we? We're starting to get pulled in here. Here is Solomon's Gap here, this picture. That would have been where these guys cross over. So September 12th, we're seeing the presence of Confederates in the immediate vicinity of Harpers Ferry. They've gotten up on the high ground on Solomon's Gap, and if you're a betting person, which some of these artillery guys no doubt were, we're going to see some more of those soon. To make matters worse, from the west, A.P. Hill's division is moving up. A.P. Hill is the vanguard of a 3-division force led by Stonewall Jackson, and that brigade or that command will reach Halltown. It's not on my map directly, but now there are Confederates on our western side. Most importantly that day is that Kershaw and Barksdale attacked Ford's troops on Maryland Heights and drive them off. What kind of artillery support do we have for those infantrymen on Maryland Heights? We don't have any. The howitzers are too far back. The Dahlgrens are pointing in the wrong direction. Okay? Not good. Not good. The Confederates will drive south. After initially putting up a stiff fight, Ford's going to start to pull back around 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And he's going to order McGrath to spike his guns and get the hell out of Dodge, okay? Get off the high ground. McGrath, to his credit, will remain for an hour and a half supporting the retreat of the retreating Federal infantry, and he will not spike his guns or move off until about 3:30, okay? He's going to lose 2 guys killed and 10 guys wounded in action. So this is how it looks. There's Kershaw and Barksdale moving south on Maryland Heights. Graham and Potts, our 2 batteries at Camp Hill, are going to fire on these advancing Confederate troops here. We see Graham and Potts there. And McGrath, with his guns, or he's going to spike his guns and move off Maryland Heights. The rebels have Maryland Heights. Okay? Now these guns here keep the Confederates away from the naval battery. The Confederates can't get up on the naval battery, but they've driven all the infantry back. Okay? That's going to be important because tomorrow something's going to happen up there where we try to get those guns off Maryland Heights. The other dangerous thing is what? That John Cook, commanding a brigade of John Walker's division, will seize Loudon Heights. What did Miles think about Loudon Heights? We need to defend anything up there? Nah, they're not coming from that direction. All right, well, in fact, they're coming from every direction, aren't they? So, Loudon Heights captured. Maryland Heights captured. A.P. Hill moving on Halltown from the west. It's getting real, isn't it? Okay. So that's what it looks like. There's Camp Hill there. There's McLaws on Maryland Heights. And there is Walker on Loudon Heights. See how much lower in elevation Camp Hill is there, right? Okay. So, the next morning, the Confederates now have to do what? They have to do the impossible. They have to get guns up on the high ground, okay? And so we'll talk about that action here with the Confederates on both Maryland Heights and Loudon Heights. Okay, there we go. So now we're going to start with with Loudon Heights. We're going to put 2 batteries of guns, 5 guns total, on Loudon Heights. At daybreak, Walker's going to order Captain Thomas French, a prosperous Petersburg merchant, age 33 years old, who's commanding the artillery of Walker's division, to put guns on Loudon Heights. So he's going to take 3 guns from his own battery and 2 guns from Captain James Branch's battery, led by Lieutenant Melvin Martin, and they're going to put guns up on Loudon Heights. Now, what else is happening on September 14th? A few miles to our north and a few miles to our west, or east rather. Battle of South Mountain's going on. Okay? So there's a sense of urgency to get those guns up there, aren't there? Because coming up on our rear is the Army of the Potomac. Okay? So by 10 o'clock, Walker's got his guns up on Loudon Heights. Working across the Shenandoah River is McLaw's command. He's got 2 batteries. He's going to take the rifled guns only. What do we know about the rifled guns? Long range. Okay. Long range guns, lighter in weight. So these 2 commanders, Henry Carleton, a physician, a doctor, and John Reed, former chief of police in Savannah, Georgia, are going to bring a total of 4 guns up here. Okay. Okay. Now, as all this is happening, who got their guns up first? Walker did. Walker sends a communication to Stonewall Jackson using signal flags. And he says, I'm ready to fire. And what does Jackson say? Wait. Wait. We'll talk about why he wants to wait in just a second here. Okay? So the guns are up on Maryland Heights. The guns are up on Loudon Heights. And let's look at what the Federals are doing. And in the meantime, McIlvaine now knows what? They're going to hit me from every direction. From Schoolhouse Ridge to the west, from Maryland Heights to the northeast, and from Loudon Heights to the southeast. So he is going to reinforce his positions on Bolivar Heights. He's going to send additional guns to Rigby, 2 of those 20-pounders we captured, we brought back from Winchester a few days ago. We're going to move some guns from Camp Hill, some of Graham's guns, up to Bolivar Heights. And we're going to also start opening fire on those Confederates that are trying to build those fortifications up there. Trying to build those guns, I should say. Okay? So these guys are under some fire by Graham and Potts as they're putting their guns in. All right. What's Jackson's problem? Jackson has to do what? He is over here on Bolivar, on Schoolhouse Ridge. He has to communicate with McLaws, who's across the river. He's got to communicate with Walker, who's across the river. Okay. Now you can send messengers, but that's a long time-consuming process to get those messages from point A to point B. Get them to the river, get across, climb the mountain to get up there to those respective artillery commands. So he's going to rely on what? He's going to rely on signal flags to communicate, okay? That can get a message there faster as long as the other guy can see him, right? As long as the other guy can see him. And hopefully you keep those messages pretty brief. Because that poor clerk, the signal guy, has got to send that out, what? Letter by letter, okay? Well, Jackson wants a coordinated artillery fire, and so he's going to initially send a 130-word message, okay? That outlines everything he wants to have done, everything he wants to do here, okay? And he tells them we want a concentrated fire and all that kind of good stuff. Walker can't wait. John Walker can't wait. He said, I got to get my guns in action. Okay, so what he does is he pushes out some infantry on the high ground here so that the Yankees down here see him and they open fire on him. And he says, well, you gave me a loophole. You said if I have come under fire, I can shoot back. And so that's what's going to happen. French and French are going to shoot back here. Okay, McLaws is going to get into action, okay? And just a couple quotes from some of these guys who are now under fire. This is a guy named Captain Edward Rigby from Vermont. His troops are down in Harpers Ferry. He says he saw 2, 3, 4, half a dozen puffs of smoke burst out in the very center of them from Walker's guns here. There was a crash, then another and another, and columns of dirt and smoke leaped into the air as though a dozen young volcanoes had burst forth. Okay, now we're under fire. Now we're under fire. McLaw's men join the fire, the bombardment. Initially, he tries to hit Bolivar Heights, but it's a little too far away, 4,600 yards. So he's going to concentrate on Camp Hill. He's going to shoot at Camp Hill and the guns there. Much closer, aren't they? Much closer in elevation, much closer in range. And so these guys are going to shoot back at him. But in the process, there's no fire discipline. Nobody's telling these battery commanders, aim carefully, shoot carefully. And what do? They blow up all their ammunition. They shoot up almost all their ammunition that night, that afternoon, okay? And that's sort of what the town looks like. It's not looking too good there. That is Maryland Heights. That's Loudon Heights there. And so there is a lot of damage in town. Not a lot of soldiers killed or wounded, but a lot of damage in the town. And that's just the threats from Maryland and Loudon Heights. Here comes Stapleton Crutchfield. Stapleton Crutchfield is a VMI graduate, #1 in his class. He was there when Stonewall Jackson was a professor. He is the chief of artillery for those 3 divisions that are coming from Bolivar Heights, approaching Bolivar Heights. And the first group are going to be from Shoemaker's Battalion, from John R. Jones's division. 3 batteries, 7 rifle guns, 3 smoothbores. They're going to set up here on the northern end of Schoolhouse Ridge, and they're going to open fire on those Confederates there. And those Yankees there. The Yankees are going to return fire. Walker's Battalion, not to be confused with John Walker Division Commander. This is Reuben Walker, A.P. Hill's artillery commander. They're going to bring 5 batteries to this so-called impassable terrain that until a couple of days ago nobody was on it. We're not going to. Miles says they can't get up there, so I'm not going to worry about it. Okay, but A.P. Hill and Dorsey Pender are going to push troops up there onto that position. Okay, and the U.S. Army is going to respond by bringing some additional guns down there, and then finally, Courtney's battalion, of Lawton's division, is going to come up in the center, right along the Charlestown Pike there. We're going to get there really too late to open fire, but right now, what do we have fire? From 3 different directions, don't we? Maryland, Loudon, Schoolhouse Ridge. That's what Jackson's artillery line looks like on Schoolhouse Ridge. That's what the Federal artillery looks like on Bolivar Heights. Okay, you walk up there to Bolivar Heights, there's that little notch there that you can see out, and you can actually see those Confederate guns in that field out there. A.P. Hill, moving in from the south, is going to occupy his position. This is a last position on the Murray Farm that's actually not going to be there till the next day, and that's Potts and Rigby who are shooting at him. A.P. Hill's over here, and that's what they look like. Brad hasn't gotten up yet, so I think. Okay, I'm working on it. Okay, real quick here. We have 39 Federal guns, 60 Confederate guns. Okay. What happens the last night? The Confederates are going to stay busy. They are going to set the final trap. Stapleton Crutchfield is going to move 10 guns across the Shenandoah River and put them in position, probably the most dangerous position the Confederates can have guns because they can shoot behind the Bolivar Heights line. And that's going on all night. The Yankees can hear them, and they move it up the chain of command. What's Miles do? Nothing. Doesn't do anything. Maybe resigned to this. And I'm going to fly now. Okay, this is A.P. Hill. He moves his guns up. He moves his infantry up for a final attack the next day. And Crutchfield's guns are on what's called the Nice Warner Farm. You can see that here. This is the Murray Farm is where A.P. Hill is, and where the final Union line up here, Rigby and Potts, is right here. Okay. What else happens? We got to get our troops off of Maryland Heights because who's right behind me now? 6th Corps, Franklin. He's broken through at Crampton's Gap. So we pull off 2 of our 1 battery of guns and send them to Crampton's Gap. The Union soldiers make some adjustments. Walker's going to open fire. Rigby and Potts are going to return fire. That's the first opening shots of the day. We're going to see Crutchfield's guns come into action here. And when that happens, the Federals cannot reinforce their line at Bolivar Heights because they're interdicted by these guns back here. Okay? Schoolhouse Ridge, Crutchfield, Courtney, engage. Maryland and Loudon Heights come under fire. A lot of overcast fog the next day, okay? You can't see as well as you could the day before. So that's going to affect the fire coming from those 2 positions up there. But gradually, the guns of the Yankees are going to start to slow down. We're out of ammunition. We have a council of war. We have Miles, we have White, we have McIlvaine, and they conclude what? We don't have anything to hold these guys back, and they decide to surrender. There's the white flag that just went up, okay? And to Steve's point earlier, and to Sharon's point, the Confederates kept firing for about 20 minutes. They kept shooting. Some of it was maybe they couldn't see with the fog on the river. Maybe there was just a position where they weren't able to respond, and it took about 20 minutes to stop firing. And in that process, an artillery round explodes near Dixon Miles and mortally wounds him. Okay, he says, "I've done my duty, and what I thought to be my duty, this is a fit end for a soldier." So we have a surrender. Surrender at Harpers Ferry. Spoils of war. I'm not going to go through all the numbers. An interesting thing, though, is that A.P. Hill says we got 70 artillery pieces, but McIlvaine says, no, you didn't. You only got 47 of them, okay? If you look at the OR, the number that you see in the OR is that. All right. What did Miles fail to do? Failed to order additional batteries, disobeyed orders from General Wool, failed to fortify Loudon Heights, failed to put troops on Bull Hill, belated response to McLaws' advance. He sends 4 short-range howitzers up to Maryland Heights, fails to take action when advised of additional Confederate guns, and fails to regulate the fire of his batteries, okay? The Harpers Ferry Commission concludes, incapacity amounting to almost imbecility led to the shameful surrender of the post. So that's the end for Dixon Miles. What happens to his men? 630 guys go to Camp Douglas, okay, with those 13,000 federal prisoners, and they're going to be there for a while. But for them, in some respects, the story has a good ending. Battery A and F are going to come back into service and fight in the Sheridan's campaign. Okay. The other batteries are going to get set out west. They're going to be at the Burnside siege of Nashville, Vicksburg, and places like that. So they will all come back to life, fortunately, and so will their battery commanders. And I can tell you more about that in a break if you'd like to hear that. I want to conclude with this thought, and then we will take a short break. Despite the odds against them, surrounded, outnumbered, and disadvantaged by their poor positioning, the 6 federal batteries at Harpers Ferry gave a good account of themselves, and the artillery fight was not the walkover often portrayed. McGrath refused to withdraw from Maryland Heights when ordered and remained there until all the federal infantry had retreated. The guns on Camp Hill stood their ground through a heavy artillery fire, even managing to kill one of John Walker's artillery lieutenants on Loudon Heights. And the cannoneers on Bolivar Heights fired their guns literally to the last round before they succumbed and gave up. Julius White perhaps put it best, stating that the federal artillery acquitted themselves in the most honorable manner and deserved great credit for their indomitable courage under such a fire. Thanks very much.